So Standard Bank, the blue one, right? You've seen them around. 150-year history in South Africa. Since 1990, though, it's been building up its operations elsewhere in Africa. It must also be said it's been trying to build operations in London and Russia and Turkey and Argentina and places like that. But recently it's been exiting those and getting more specifically focused on the African continent. Market cap, 195.2 billion rand. 20% of those shares belong to the Chinese mega bank, ICBC. Trades, I'm told, on a price to earnings ratio of just below 12 and puts out a dividend yield of 3.4%. So, Levan, this is a stock which has kind of gone sideways for the last 5 years. It does that little dip there with the mess of '08, and then it gets back to this kind of 110 to 120 band. So where are we with Standard Bank? I mean, what's going to transform this thing and get it rocking higher?
What I believe is important with Standard Bank is they're firmly entrenched on the continent of Africa. They have made inroads into deepest, darkest Africa, both East and West Africa, where they have substantial operations. They've resurfaced like a mythical Greek creature with two heads. Yeah. And I believe that it's these two heads that are likely to lead them to even bigger success.
Return on equity up there, once you've capitalized your license and you've gotten through the first stages of getting a clientele and getting your office established, can be very good, right? Because it's relatively easy to get great mandates to handle people coming in, trade-related finance, and then, you know, investment banking and all the other things.
And they've concentrated on a lot of trade-related finance, some merchant activities. If you consider the action in the West Coast, Nigeria's growth at about 7% per annum on GDP means Standard Bank is very well positioned to
What
capture.
about bringing it back home here to South Africa? We know Standard Bank has got like the old established market position in all of the retailing, in the corporate banking. They're very strong in corporate and investment advisory work, very strong. And then in mortgages and credit cards, you know, you'll never see Standard Bank with less than, 20% market share in everything. So competitively, South Africa-wise, happy with where they are?
They've been market leaders in South Africa. They've managed to maintain a fairly decent bad debt record, and this isn't the case when we look at some of their peers. The one aspect where I think they could work slightly harder is within the technology environment, and I think FirstRand's beat them on that score.
So you think that the sort of commitment to branch infrastructure, the online site of Standard Bank looks as though it was sort of built in-house. It's looked the same since it was first launched.
It's got the makings of a homemade job. So maybe that's something they could spruce on. In general, the business has done well. It's a stock that you want to hold. It's something that should be part of your portfolio, and it's been very nice to trade in these past few months.
I hear you saying that, but I mean, when you say it's nice to trade, you're talking about a range type of thing. But I mean, really, in a more positive environment, could it not get to 150 or so?
It certainly can. What we should bear in mind, a low interest rate environment is probably the best position for any bank. They're able on a basis to borrow very cheaply. Their markup is generally a fixed number. So if the base is lower, the percentage return is a lot better in a low interest rate environment.
One more question before we go to hot or not. What about the management transition? Jacko Maree, having gotten the job in his early 40s, did a pretty good job. Retiring now, relatively young, being replaced not by one new dynamic dynamo, but in fact two executives. Ben Kruger, who's a friend of mine, great guy, very talented, in his early 50s, I would guess. And then Sim Shabalala as the sort of heir apparent. So now we've got a dual CEO situation. Does that cause you sleepless nights?
Not at all. That's why I mentioned it's resurfaced as a mythical Greek.
Oh, right. I was wondering what you were going on with this Greek mythology about. I thought you were talking about East and West Africa. You were talking about the two CEOs.
Heads, yes. So
neither of whom are Greek.
No, neither of whom are Greek. But I believe that it's going to add a very, very interesting energy. There's a lot happening in this business in South Africa, on the continent, and in a variety of different divisions. So possibly it's the best choice to have two very good leaders, also youthful leaders, so they're able to drive this bank in the right direction.
Okay, so am I reading it correctly? You're hot on this one?
Yes, hot on Standard Bank.
I'm going to go with not hot. I'm just feeling a little bit anti this group of stocks for a while, but yeah, that's fine.